Meditation and Spiritual Life, Swami Yatiswarananda. Love and attachment. Things or persons whom we love draw our minds and create attachment, hatred, and aversion. Love and aversion are only obverse and reverse of the same coin. Never make any mistake about this. So, they come under the same category. Hatred or aversion is love or attachment turned upside down. It is not something essentially different. We must get rid of all forms of attachment and all forms of fear by becoming dispassionate and free from personal likes and dislikes. We must be kind without ever getting attached. There should never be any personal claim on anybody or anybody's love, nor should we allow anybody to have any personal claim on us or on our affection. We must love God alone and allow others also to do the same. Christ says, "He who loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." And there is nothing truer than that. And it is also true that he who allows any other person to love him more than the divine is not worthy of the divine and will never attain to the divine, however hard he may try. We reap only what we sow, and so long as we go on allowing all these likes and dislikes, fettering ourselves and others with the chains of so called love, we shall remain bond slaves, bring misery to ourselves and to others. Misery is the penalty we pay for our attachments. In some cases, it comes soon, in others late, but all have to pay for their folly. When people love us, we feel flattered. We like being attractive to others. We like being loved by others as objects of enjoyment, but we are generally too impulsive and unreflective to know that we thereby only create troubles both for ourselves and for others and prevent our spiritual progress. We should be dignified and well guarded. We should adopt such an attitude that others do not dare to approach us in the wrong way. I'm telling this especially to ladies. The Western concept of chivalry has no place in spiritual life. Devotees and spiritual aspirants are our own because we are all bound by the common cord of divine love, which is permanent. Love for one's spiritual brothers is far more intense and beneficial than worldly love. Look at the relationship that existed among the disciples of Christ, among the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. What tender love, mutual respect, and consideration existed among them when we, as youngsters, came in contact with the great disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. We too were deeply drawn by the intense but pure and unselfish love that showered upon us. They showered upon us. Only a spiritual man can have real love for others. The so called love of worldly people is very often only refined self interest. Illumined souls love all people alike without getting attached to them because they have realized the truth of the famous Upanishadic statement, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It is not for the sake of the husband that the husband is loved, but for the sake of the self that the husband is loved. It is not for the sake of the wife that the wife is loved, but for the sake of the self that the wife is loved. It is not for the sake of sons that sons are loved, but for the sake of the self that sons are loved. It is not for the sake of everything that everything is loved, but for the sake of the self that everything is loved. The lives of illumined souls teach us that renunciation and detachment do not mean callousness or indifference. Callousness is not Non attachment. It is nothing but selfishness, clinging to one's own ego. Try to render help to others as much as lies within your power, taking all precautions to protect yourself from getting attached to them. If you cannot do this, pray to God for the welfare of others. If you pray sincerely and intensely, you will find help reaching those you want to help. But remember this: if you want to pray for others, you should feel yourself close to God. If you cannot prevent yourself from getting attached to others, you had better not help them. You had better take recourse to prayer. In fact, every sincere aspirant must include this kind of prayer for others in his daily spiritual practice. During the period of transition from worldly life to spiritual life, we may feel a little indifferent towards others for the time being. In order to protect ourselves, we may even cultivate an attitude of indifference, but only for a short time. If you hold to the ideal of God realization and lead a pure life, you will find after some time your old love for others returning to you in a purified and sublimated form, in which only attachment has been eliminated and replaced by intense love for God. You then love others for the sake of the divine and not for any selfish purpose. That means you see the divine in others. You then love others for the sake of the self. Now, the self is slowly transforming into the divine self. So, you see that divine self in others and not for any selfish purpose. This alone is true love. We should steer clear of two dangers. One is to love others with human love and falsely call it divine. So, divine means selflessness. And the other is to be too indifferent to even the right feelings and be negligent of one's duties. Both are harmful to spiritual growth.